At the core of negligence law is a problem of physics. A single act of carelessness sends a shock wave of consequences outward into society. If left unchecked, the theoretical liability for this single mistake would extend infinitely, touching anyone even marginally affected down the chain of events. This unbounded infinite liability threatens the civil justice system. It would bankrupt defendants and cause the economic and structural collapse of tort law under the weight of endless claims. To prevent this infinite regress, courts require a strict mathematical-style filter to sever liability before it spreads out of control. Identifying a negligent act is entirely useless without first establishing a precise boundary determining who is legally permitted to complain about it. Courts use a specific legal mechanism as the circuit breaker, the establishment of a duty of care. A duty of care is not a universal blanket of protection owed to society at large. It is highly specific, conditional, and strictly bounded. The foundational rule governing this boundary is the proximity principle. The absolute core requirement of this principle dictates that a legal duty is owed exclusively to those with whom the defendant is in a proximate relationship. This creates a strict chronological hurdle. The plaintiff must affirmatively prove this proximate relationship exists before the court will assess the resulting damages or the breach itself. The proximity principle forces the chaotic chain reaction of negligence into a clearly defined, manageable zone of legal accountability. This schematic models how a court systematically tests for a proximate relationship in practice. The central node acts as the origin point, the specific careless act or omission committed by the defendant. Scattered around this origin point are the pool of potential plaintiffs, all claiming to have suffered injury from that single central act. The plaintiff's burden is to draw a direct, valid structural line connecting their specific node back to the defendant. Merely proving that an injury occurred does not automatically solidify this line into a valid legal relationship. The central jurisprudential question is what exact legal metric dictates whether this dashed line crystallizes into a recognized proximate relationship. Tort liability is purely relational. It does not exist in a vacuum, but exists solely within the verified structural link between two specific parties. The definitive metric for verifying this connection comes from a landmark Australian authority. Academic analysis of this boundary begins with the formal case citation, Jansch v. Coffey, decided in 1984. The operative rule is pinpointed exactly at page 584 of the Commonwealth Law Reports. The Commonwealth Law Reports, or CLR, is the authorized series of decisions published by the High Court of Australia. The author of the formulation is Justice William Dean, cited as Dean J., who played a critical role in structuring modern negligence doctrine. Dean J. defined the exact phrasing required to form a duty. Proximity involved the notion of nearness or closeness. Nearness or closeness serves as the functional test that strips away vague estimations of foreseeability. Dean J. permanently operationalized the proximity principle, translating a theoretical boundary into a specific textual metric that courts must apply. A common misconception in first-year law is the assumption that closeness strictly implies physical, geographic distance between the parties. This graph illustrates how the judicial concept of nearness or closeness is actually a multidimensional legal construct used to evaluate the total relationship. The horizontal axis tracks physical and circumstantial distance. This is the literal space and time separating the act from the injury. The vertical axis measures relational and causal closeness. This evaluates pre-existing legal or emotional ties, or the directness of the chain of events. A relationship can score high on this axis, even if the physical distance is vast. The plaintiff's case is mapped onto these axes to see if their combined score crosses the requisite threshold to form a proximate relationship. If the multidimensional nearness standard is not met, the proximate relationship fails. Nearness or closeness acts as an aggregate legal filter, determining with mathematical rigidity whether a relationship warrants judicial intervention. Returning to the macro view of the theoretical crisis, we see the expanding pulse of liability threatening the network. We apply the Dean J. filter directly to this chaos, establishing the strict boundary of nearness or closeness. As the pulse hits the perimeter line, it stops. Liability is contained, illuminating only the specific nodes that sit firmly inside the proximity boundary. The nodes falling outside the perimeter remain dark. Despite suffering potential harm, their legal claims are instantly severed due to a lack of proximity. The proximity principle, operationalized by Dean J., acts as the definitive geographic and relational firewall, saving tort law from infinite liability. A negligent act alone is legally meaningless without a proximate plaintiff to sue over it. Any structural analysis of duty must anchor on the governing authority, Dean J.'s formulation in Jange v. Coffey. Successfully mapping a plaintiff's position within the threshold of nearness or closeness is the absolute prerequisite to proceeding with any negligence claim. Mastering the mechanics of this proximity filter is the essential first step to structurally analyzing liability in modern tort law.